With the release of Yuji vs Choso's fight, and the absolute peak that it brought to the fandom, and at the same time, the catastrophically down bad Nanami fans, I thought, hey, what if Nanami fought Choso? Who would win? Nanami vs Choso is closer than you think. Mentor to the protagonist, Yuji Itadori, Kento Nanami is the definition of a grade 1 sorcerer. Possessing the ratio technique, he's able to divide something from 7 to 3 segments and strike a specific point, turning it into a critical hit. Nanami's technique is one of the simpler side of Jujutsu Kaisen's vast range of abilities, but don't let that mislead you. Nanami is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to the first half of JJK. Nanami's overtime binding vow limits his power to 80% before a certain time period in the day. After that, Nanami clocks out, and if he's still fighting, he goes into overtime. Why do I bring this up? Because before clocking out and working overtime, this 80% Nanami was capable of fighting on even footing with a young Mahito, a cast spirit with the rank of special grade. This goes to show the level of power and skill obtained from a Black Flash, as a year prior, Nanami had performed Black Flash and acquired the knowledge of Core of Cast Energy, transforming him into a far superior sorcerer than he had been before so. But even before that, Nanami was still grade 1 level, which is a testament to just how strong Nanami is in general. Important information for determining how skilled Nanami is with regards to Jujutsu, at least for early JJK. Even Mahito acknowledges Nanami's skill at this time, Mahito himself being somewhat of a prodigy that evolves at a similar pace to Yuji Itadori, with them being parallels of each other, with Yuji being capable of performing Black Flash after only around 1 to 2 months of even learning Jujutsu existed. Such is Nanami's skill that he could even subconsciously protect his soul with his cast energy, a feat no one has ever been directly stated to have replicated. This is not to say that no one can, like say Gojo Kenjaku, or to say that Nanami has curse control on their level. All I'm saying here is Nanami is the only one directly stated to have done this. This is all on top of Mahito implying Nanami was mentally conflicted at the time of their fight due to his soul wavering at killing transfigured humans. The soul has deep ties to Jujutsu, and this may imply that parts of his cursed energy control or output were in some way lessened. This may not be the case at all, and it could just be a character thing, but it's still worth bringing up. Mahito, even after fighting Nanami and Yuji, even evolved to the point of unlocking domain expansion, as he thought he might genuinely die fighting both of them. This goes to show that both Yuji and Nanami's skill levels are insane, but at the same time, the idea that Mahito may have needed to cast domain to stop Nanami is a powerful one, but this could just be me meat munching Nanami. From here, not much is relevant for Nanami until the Shibuya incident, where we find out Nanami got hands for real, as he's able to kill Haruta, the curse user victimizing Nobara, in a single attack, Haruta being around semi-grade 1 to grade 1-ish level. It's unclear since curse users are not really ever ranked with a couple of exceptions, but Haruta does kind of manhandle semi-grade 1s, so it's probably fair to say he's around grade 1 level. It's actually super impressive that Nanami is capable of performing this feat as well, as we don't ever really see a sorcerer get instantly killed by a single attack outside of the extreme high tiers. So Nanami taking all of Haruta's attacks like this, as though they didn't even happen, and being able to instantly kill Haruta with a single strike, demonstrates the words that Nobara follows the scene up with. This is what it means to be a grade 1 sorcerer. Granted, Nanami is in overtime for the entirety of Shibuya, meaning his power is not at 80% of its normal level, but at 120% of its normal level. So technically speaking, Nanami is in fact amped here, but this is standard for Nanami, and if we were to put him against Choso with the setting of Shibuya, he would be in overtime regardless, so not much changes for this video. This then transitions into the special grade cursed Dagon fight, where Nanami is able to draw blood and slam Dagon into the ground, although Nanami seems to think this had very little effect. After a little more fighting, Dagon surmises that Nanami is worth about 30% of his domain's power. This may not sound like a lot, but Naobito, someone shown to be vastly stronger than Nanami, was not opposed to Nanami being there with him, but knew Maki was too weak to be there. In addition to this, he told Maki to leave, showing that Naobito himself doesn't want weak people around him, or too weak people around him, implying that he considers Nanami to be strong enough to help him fight a special grade curse, whereas Maki wasn't. In addition to this, Naobito recognized Dagon had a massive amount of cursed energy, and a domain expansion is a noticeable amp to your stats. Nanami being worth 30% of this is still pretty impressive, all things considered. Tying into this, Dagon thinks it's very impressive that Nanami is able to withstand his domain, constantly attacking Nanami for an entire minute and only losing an eye in this time. This should give you a pretty good idea of how tough Nanami is. Being able to withstand any domain expansion is already an extremely impressive feat, but being able to take a full minute of special grade domain expansion is an incredible display of endurance. Not to mention, Nanami can still fight even after this, reacting to Domain Dagon's attacks and continuing to fight. This next part may not be too impressive, however, as only a little bit later, Toji arrives and seems to think Megumi is stronger than one-armed Naruto and Nanami, as he bears his fangs to the strongest around. From here, Jogo prepares Nanami medium rare, and we cut to a couple of Sukuna chapters. When we return to Nanami, we see the aftermath of Jogo's attack, with half of Nanami's body essentially missing, and he's still capable of fighting. This goes to show that really the only way to put Nanami down is to land a truly fatal blow, something like an attack to the head, neck, or vital organ. And this leads us to what will be one of Nanami's toughest opponents, the special grade death painting Choso. At this point in the story, Choso is by far Yuji's toughest opponent. On sight, Choso was ready to throw hands with Yuji, initiating the fight with piercing blood, an attack that far surpasses the speed of sound and is able to pierce through Yuji's guard. This is insanely impressive since Yuji is praised constantly for his body's natural toughness, with even Kenjaku and Jogo pointing out that Yuji's body is unnaturally durable and impressing them both. Granted, this is a much stronger Yuji at this time, but I'm just trying to get a general idea across here. In the anime, which is the primary canon according to Gege themselves, Choso demonstrates extreme skill with the manipulation of piercing blood, being able to drag it around and whip it around, and even creating unique methods of attack, such as when he draws a circle around Yuji to crush him under the collapsing street, which PB was shown to completely tear through. Piercing blood isn't all Choso can do though, as again, the anime heavily expanded on Choso's skill when it comes to blood manipulation. Such things like raining down spikes on the enemy gives Choso good area coverage. The slicing exorcism, essentially being Choso's version of Destructo Disc, gives Choso another method of attack. On top of this, Choso can throw a tidal wave of blood at an opponent to soak them entirely. This isn't shown, but it's possible this could blind the opponent if Choso got lucky. However, what is shown is Choso's ability to manipulate the weight of this blood. As shown against Naoya, Choso changes the weight of the blood, slowing him down and making it much easier to attack. An additional ability that Choso has is Supernova, a shotgun-like attack that not even Yuji could sense, despite looking straight at Choso and witnessing his cursed energy manipulation. Choso has spent around 150 years perfecting this attack, and it shows, as Supernova is used constantly by Choso on either his opponent to damage them, or on the environment to push an enemy into an awkward position, which favors Choso. This is purely the ranged option Choso possesses. If things come face to face, Choso has additional options here too, being able to construct weapons like a knife from his blood, aiding in close combat. Choso uses these weapons to help disable his opponent, the example being him stabbing Yuji in his feet to mess with his movement, but Yuji being simply him shrugs this off, which surprises Choso. Choso's technique of blood manipulation is extremely powerful, but his ace in the hole is definitely Flowing Red Scale. As shown with both Kamo and Choso, it's essentially a stat amp, increasing your speed and power. Choso is not only able to use Flowing Red Scale, but use Flowing Red Scale Stack, which essentially is Choso pouring all of his cursed energy into this technique. Kind of like a maximum technique. With this, Choso's stats increase even further, and he was shown to be on even footing with Yuji in the manga. The anime somewhat shows Choso being superior. This is down to interpretation and isn't really relevant to this video. Choso being able to keep up with Yuji, who can dodge his piercing blood, which far surpasses the speed of sound, should say enough for his speed. Although piercing blood is said to only be fast at the start, Yuji still seems to think its speed is incredible and that he only has a 50-50 chance of dodging it. Choso then being able to keep up with not only this Yuji, but one that is continuously getting stronger too. And this should help explain how fast Choso is, with Yuji himself even considering Choso to be strong. As for how tough Choso is, there are a variety of ways to interpret this, but it comes down to a single line of thinking. At the beginning of the Shibuya incident, Yuji demonstrates his strength to Ino, Nanami's biggest fan and student. After witnessing Yuji's striking power, Ino thinks that Yuji could seriously give Nanami a run for his money when it comes to attack power. This then begs the question, is Ino referring to base Nanami, Nanami's technique, or overtime Nanami, as this results in different things? Well, ignoring the fact that Ino might even be downplaying the level of power Yuji displays since he's Nanami's fan, and also the fact that Yuji was stated to be capable of one-shotting the barrier if it wasn't amped, then we can look at it like this. Nanami is likely always using his curse technique. Even against Haruta, whose Nanami's normal punches could instantly kill, Nanami still opted to use his curse technique, as shown by a single frame flash showing us. Nanami likely instinctively uses his cast technique as he pretty much doesn't have a reason not to, since it seems that his CT uses very little cast energy. If this is the case, in which it should be given that Nanami's insane stamina and cast energy manipulation thanks to Black Flash, we can first conclude that Ino is probably factoring in cast technique. Some might believe that Nanami can only use his cast technique for critical hits with the dull blade he wraps his tie around, but this is untrue, as shown against Mahito when he punches the wall and still used his cast technique, pure striking strength. It's super doubtful that Ino can tell when Nanami is using his cast technique and when he isn't consistently or at all, since Ino's skill level is around semi-grade 1 and he lacks heavily in any kind of skill feat, so his ability to deduce cast technique usage is probably on the lower side and probably less than a young Mahito who struggled to identify when Nanami used his cast technique. So if Ino is comparing Nanami's critical hits to Yuji, now we have to determine if he's comparing overtime or 80% Nanami. Considering that Ino seems to be always with Nanami, or at least implies he spends a large amount of time with him trying to get his approval for grade 1, we can probably reconcile these two and just say that it's not 80% or 120% Nanami that Yuji is being compared to, but the standard 100% Nanami. You could easily argue Ino is riding Nanami and only comparing Yuji to base no CT Nanami that he's only ever seen hold back, but in the same breath, someone can argue Ino is shocked that someone can match overtime CT Nanami's critical hits. I'm going to take the middle road, not because I don't want to take a stance on either of these things, but because I think that we can all meet halfway and accept Ino is using a Nanami at 100%. So then, continuing on from this tangent, Yuji is compared to Nanami at the start of Shibuya. From here, Yuji goes on to fight Awasaka and grows stronger thanks to Todo and Maki's statements of fighting making you stronger. It's also here that Megumi implies Yuji is stronger than himself, this same Megumi having goals of surpassing Yuji as stated in the previous arc, and this same Megumi going on to domain clash with Dagon, tiring out, and then being considered stronger than both one-arm Naobito and Nanami, although they were both injured. After Yuji's fight with Awasaka, he encounters Choso and struggles greatly with defeating him. Yuji considers Choso to be strong, and the anime demonstrates extreme relativity between the two. When you take this line of thinking into account, you can see that Choso being able to withstand any of Yuji's attacks is an insane feat. Choso does imply that any more than 3 to 4 hits would probably kill him, but he also implies that his block is sufficient enough to stop the majority of the damage, meaning if he can block these attacks, they don't scare him all that much. There is an argument to be made that Yuji was holding back against Choso because he didn't want to fight him, but a counter argument is that Yuji found the resolve to fight when he understood his role. An additional counter argument to that is the resolve Yuji found was flawed because he was fighting for others and not himself, a mindset in JJK that is demonstrably weaker, as Yuji shows just changing mindset can instantly change your level of power, as he demonstrated by his interactions with Sukuna. I do have a video explaining this concept and I'll link it in the description if you want to go check it out. This would help explain why Sukuna was annoyed Yuji lost to someone inferior to him, and why Sukuna thinks Choso is inferior to Yuji. There is also an argument to be made that Choso is only relative to a Yuji that was using one arm, as Yuji didn't use his left arm for the entire fight. Yuji being able to fend off Choso with one arm would not only show Yuji's skill, but tie into the statement that Choso is an inexperienced fighter, a decided advantage for Nanami. Overall though, the fight is close, and you can make a decent argument for both sides, but ultimately, in my opinion, I have to give this fight to Choso. Not only does Choso possess a cast technique advantage given the complexity and variety of options it grants him, but also a massive range advantage. Choso can easily keep Nanami at a distance thanks to Piercing Blood, Supernova, and Slicing Exorcism, in addition to all the unnamed attacks the anime included. Add on to this that if Nanami does not close the gap, then Choso can weigh him down with his blood manipulation by throwing a tidal wave at him at range or at point blank, like he did with Yuji, and it pushes the fight more toward Choso, giving him a speed advantage if you don't think he already had one. Thanks to the weapons Choso can create, he can effectively even out Nanami's close combat advantage with the weapon that Nanami has. With Yuji being compared to Nanami at the start of the arc, a comparison could be drawn here. As long as Choso blocks Nanami's attacks, then he should be able to dismiss a majority of the damage. Even if he is hit, he can take a couple of attacks before going down. Nanami, however, does have a massive skill advantage, and if it came to straight fist to fist, I think Nanami would definitely have the advantage there and would probably skill diff Choso, as Nanami with both hands is probably a much superior fighter in close quarters combat. But this is assuming you think Nanami is the same speed as him and Nanami is able to get close enough to use that advantage. Ultimately, Choso's versatility, comparable or even slightly better feats would, in my opinion, have Choso coming out as the winner in this battle. But I can easily see someone making a decent argument for Nanami here. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And the question I'll leave you with this week is, who do you think wins between Shibuya Yuji and Nanami? At every point. So let's say the Mahito fight Yuji versus Nanami, the Choso fight Yuji versus Nanami, and the Awasaka fight Yuji versus Nanami. Who is winning these 3 battles? Let me know in the comments. I'm super sorry for how my voice sounds this video. I'm sure some of you know, but I've been very sick recently. Chest infection, sore throat, you know how it is, but I still wanted to put a video out, even if I do sound kind of terrible, dying, down with the sickness. You know how it is. I appreciate your patience and I appreciate you for making it this far into the video. Seriously, I cannot thank you enough, and I'm super thankful for all the support everyone shows me. Even if I am sick right now, I still want to give back to everyone that supports me. Thank you all for watching. My name is Valor, also known as Kai, and I wish you all a wonderful day.